Leon Prater might be the most dangerous villain Dexter has ever faced, and that's not because he's a killer, it's because he's something far more terrifying. In this video, I'm breaking down Leon Prater's entire story, from his twisted philosophy to his ultimate endgame with Dexter. And trust me, once you understand what he's really doing, every scene with him becomes chilling.
Are you not like me?
Me? Oh.
Leon Prater presents himself to the world as the perfect example of refined wealth with purpose. He's an ultra high net worth financier and cultural patron who cultivates this almost monk-like aesthetic using his immense wealth and power. Prater is always seen in subdued clothes, he has unhurried movements and very controlled speech.
I cannot express how excited I am to meet you, Leon Prater.
But most importantly, he has this seemingly supernatural gift for making other people feel seen and chosen. Leon rarely flaunts his power. There isn't a lot of bravado connected with his public perception. Instead, his name floats at the edges of elite philanthropy, startup patronage, and exclusive A-list culture. And this carefully curated image of refined taste, generosity, and intellectualism provides the perfect camouflage for his disturbing private obsession, extravagant experiential relationships with various infamous serial killers. His interest is far from passive. He collects anything he can that is related to a serial killer.
This was the New York Rippers, a man who terrorized the streets I once played on as a child.
Their tools, their trophies, their clothes. He even has the table the ice truck killer died on. He stores all of it in a secret vault hidden in his wine cellar, a collection he only shares with the killers he invites to his annual gatherings. It's nothing short of eerie and very indicative of his wealth and how far he is willing to go to get what he wants, no matter how macabre or taboo. But here's what makes Prater truly unique among Dexter villains. He's figured out a way to be consumed and intoxicated by violence while completely avoiding committing the physical act himself. He loves the thrill, the intimacy, the secrets, and especially the power that comes from holding them, all while preserving perfect, plausible deniability. He craved it. Leon glamorizes serial killers as artists of will and control, and his entire personal brand reflects that he also has a need for total control, all without ever getting his hands dirty. This isn't just wealth protecting random dangerous people from consequences, this is wealth being weaponized to create an entirely new form of predatory behavior. Leon Prater is a monster whose need to be near and needed by such bloodthirsty individuals perpetuates the disgusting things they do to innocent people. Prater pays them for their trophies, some more than others, and that is incentive enough for them to be even more active, take more innocent lives. And Prater happily facilitates that, all while manipulating everyone around him and the entire world. What's really scary though is just how good at it he is, and the fact that there is no knowing where he'll stop. Understanding Prater requires grasping his core philosophy, which is proximity without contact. He's developed a system where he can harvest all the psychological rewards of serial killing, the control, the fear, the legacy, while others do the actual crime.
Just saying, do what I tell you to do.
For Prater, killers represent a type of authenticity that can't be matched. What they do is the apex of expressing human will. Serial killers are people who have shed the pretenses that constrain normal people, but instead of becoming one himself, he's positioned himself as their patron, enabler, and collector. He's turned serial murder into a spectator sport where he's simultaneously the producer, director, and audience. You can see it in his eyes when they offer what he calls their show and tell, just how excited and titillated Prater becomes from receiving the details. It's truly sickening to watch a man all but salivate over the victimization of innocent people.
He's going to kill this woman on camera, and I have to sit here with these monsters while they enjoy every minute of it.
All while pretending to be a cop-loving philanthropist. To understand Prater's obsession with killers, we have to understand his background. As a child, Prater watched his parents die in a fatal car crash. He was in the car, but he survived. What initially seemed to be an accident caused by a drunk driver turned out to be an intentional act. The driver, a man named Cooper Morris, had a drunken argument with his girlfriend. He left in a rage and purposely rammed his car into the Praters, knowing they'd likely die, wanting to release his anger.
It wasn't an accident. I'd gotten in a drunken fight with my girlfriend, and I stormed out of the house.
This left Leon, a child with far fewer resources than he eventually managed to amass as an adult, to enter a cold and unforgiving foster care system.
He was in the judicial system, I was in the foster system, but we were
both prisoners.
Even then, he needed control. He wanted to understand what happened with his parents, and that led him to begin writing to Cooper in prison. It was through their letters that Leon learned that his parents' death was no accident.
The first letter he ever wrote to me. My first trophy.
Cooper informed him that he meant to kill, and it wasn't the first time that he'd done so. If he hadn't gone to jail for killing the Praters, he probably would have done it again. Rather than being angry, Leon was fascinated. He went on to befriend the man who killed his parents, said he felt closer to Cooper than he ever did to his own parents even. He began visiting Cooper Morris regularly, and the two formed a bond that can only be described as odd and inappropriate.
He was the first serial killer that ever shared his story with me. And do you want to know something? I felt so connected to him.
But that is when Prater's obsessive need to associate with killers was forged. He vowed never to be that scared little boy again, and though Cooper died before his 50th birthday, the damage was done. Leon never stopped collecting killers after that. When he said that he wouldn't be that scared child ever again, he meant it. He went on to become a billionaire, take care of other families, his community, and anyone else he saw fit. He was in control finally, and the power didn't only provide safety, it earned him the respect and admiration of everyone he came across, even serial killers. Leon was officially in charge, and he might do anything he can to keep it that way. This philosophy explains everything about how he operates. He never recruits killers in the conventional sense anymore, by visiting them in prison or writing them letters. Now he selects them by hand, sends people after them, and bribes them to keep them dependent on him. People arrive in his world through carefully engineered chains of flattery, exclusivity, and stagecraft that make them feel chosen rather than used or endangered, but they are both. Prater has already killed 2 of the serial killers he brought into his orbit, and it was done to protect himself. It was a matter of convenience. First, Charlie cuts off and eliminates Keith, the can clubber.
We have one rule here. Never turn on the group. Unfortunately, Keith chose not to abide by it.
Then, after Mia LaPierre, Lady Vengeance, was arrested, he had her killed as well. And based on what she told Dexter during their jog in the park,
Prater really just a fan?
I mean, the guy's a voyeur. He's a vampire.
It wasn't the first time Prater used such extreme measures to protect himself. His ruthlessness knows no bounds. He could have Mia killed in jail one night and then toast to her legacy the next. Leon Prater is a psychopath and a killer, whether he ever picked up a weapon himself or not. And the selection process itself is brilliant. Leon identified killers that interested him through private intelligence streams, and then had his head of security, Charlie, track them down and break into their home. An invitation would be left in a way that felt serendipitous, but is meticulously planned, along with a large sum of money that would make refusal to join him nearly impossible. When he met the killers, he would ask questions that made them feel like the center of attention. Things like, what do you think people are for? And what would you do if you didn't have to pretend? The more he knew about them, the easier it would be to control them, and they wanted to feel accepted. He never asks for confessions. Instead, he offered them a place where their masks could be set down and replaced with the way that they actually perceived themselves. From the first contact, Leon's invitees sensed that they were being evaluated by their murderous appetites, their pride, their skills, motives, and quote-unquote bravery. The prize Prater offered them for passing his tests and following his rules included status, sanctuary, and, in a way, a sense of sanity. But the real genius is that attendance was absolutely reliant on guests following those rules. Prater's estate isn't just a location, it's a weapon. Everything about it is designed to isolate, control, and manipulate the people who enter it. The place is opulent and hushed, with all rough edges softened by the money and sense of superiority that came with being invited there. Security is omnipresent but invisible, with staff who glide like ghosts, technology that vanishes into walls, and transport systems that erase footprints. The killers Leon collected felt important and safe while in his presence. Those helicopter transfers weren't just about showing off wealth, they're reminders of his power and how quickly he could make someone disappear if they became a problem for him. Leon's guests were completely isolated from their routines, devices, and any external loyalties. The castle and the grandiose yard that surrounded it drew all of the people who walked them deeper and deeper deeper under Prater's control. He had public-facing outdoor spaces where conversation felt candid, but was visually managed with precision. At his primary manor, he had semi-private rooms, lounges, and galleries where his lavish collections lived. Expensive artifacts, some dedicated to exclusive art, and others to horrendous crimes, each token accompanied by tales told in reverent whispers. Finally, Prater's vault created a social contract that became painfully explicit. It represented vulnerability and honesty in exchange for a place of belonging, killer performance in exchange for protection. The truth is that Prater collected people and their narratives as much as objects. He seeks tokens that tether him to their acts of murder, to what he sees as their often legendary kills. Before you watch any further, I'm happy to finally announce that I'm releasing the first limited drop of my t-shirts. At the start, there are only 100 available, so make sure you buy them while you can at dtmerch.store. Enjoy the video. Legendary kills, but the display isn't garish, it's devotional. This collection serves multiple purposes. It attracts killers who want to see their legacy preserved. It provides conversation starters that reveal how people think about violence. Most importantly, it creates leverage over anyone whose story or trophies end up in his possession. But the collection is just one component of a much larger system. Guests leave feeling like they've been truly known and understood. The reality is they've been cataloged, assessed, and filed away for future use. Prater's club isn't a ring of equals, it's a terrarium where he controls every variable. He chooses combinations that create productive friction. He is a narcissist who needs an audience, a technician who needs validation, a legend whose myth trembles under the weight of time. Leon creates micro competitions amongst his guests. Who's more talented, more principled, more pure in their approach to killing, then steps back to watch the dynamics play out. He feeds pride while withholding approval, creating psychological dependence that keeps dangerous people orbiting him safely. But the covert doctrine is that they're all just assets to be destroyed when Prater needs problems solved. These assets eliminate liabilities, provide him with new trophies, and handle dangerous situations, all while keeping Prater's hands completely clean. His language is always about honesty and care, but in actuality, Prater deals only in ownership and obedience. He's created a sustainable system for harvesting death, fear, and control while maintaining complete legal and social insulation. Before we get into how Dexter fits into all this, let me remind you to subscribe if you're enjoying this breakdown. Trust me, Prater's manipulation of Dexter gets even more twisted. Prater has perfected the art of remaining completely insulated from consequences while orchestrating maximum chaos. His methods are sophisticated and layered. First, compartmentalization. No single person sees the whole picture. Each participant thinks they're indispensable while being perfectly replaceable. This prevents anyone from having enough information to truly threaten him. Second, plausible deniability. He never orders violence directly. Instead, he describes needs and corrections, then rewards those who intuit his desires. This creates a system where people eliminate problems without him ever explicitly asking them to. Like when he had Mamma Mia murdered in prison without even muting his interview for more than a few seconds. He knew Charlie would be a fool to disappoint him, and she didn't. Third, documentation advantage. He holds all the receipts, figurative and literal, and keeps them stored in ways that make betrayal into self-immolation. Anyone who tries to expose him would expose themselves in the process. The Ken Clubber, for instance, knew that he could not actually go to the FBI or police with any incriminated information about Prater without winding up in a cell himself, if not worse. Lastly, Leon has excellent narrative control. If anything were to surface, he no doubt has pre-written stories framing himself as a kindly patron misled by dark geniuses, complete with philanthropic alibis and powerful attorneys ready to be deployed. His wealth and social connections make these cover stories instantly credible, and the idea of anyone going after him highly unlikely. This level of systematic protection explains how he can host dinner parties for active serial killers without ever facing a single consequence. Leon is not just rich enough to avoid accountability, he's engineered a near-perfect system where accountability can't reach him. Dexter's presence in his orbit begins with mutual recognition. Prater immediately senses a self-disciplined predator hiding behind a civilized mask. Dexter recognizes someone who doesn't kill, but definitely causes killing for his own sick satisfaction. This is brilliant psychological manipulation. Instead of trying to stop Dexter's killing like previous villains, Prater celebrates it. He makes Dexter feel understood and appreciated in ways he's never experienced before, even if Dexter is masquerading as another killer. What began as a wary dance became a calculated calculated exchange. Prater poses tasks as opportunities for course correction, appealing to Dexter's self-image as a necessary force who removes monsters from the world. But each successful kill only tightens the leash. Each secret shared becomes another link in a chain. But Prater also recognizes that Dexter represents both his greatest opportunity and his greatest threat. The Bay Harbor Butcher would be the crown jewel of his collection, but Dexter's code and capabilities make him impossible to fully control. If he knew Dexter's true identity as the BHB, he would understand that any other serial killer he brought around would be in harm's way. It's a miracle he hasn't already realized who Dexter really is, given how many of the serial killers he's invited to the gatherings this year are already dead. Would Prater accept Dexter if he did know? He did say that he prided himself on getting the best of the best, and Dexter is definitely up there. Maybe Leon would be impressed, or maybe he'd try to have Dexter eliminated out of fear that Dexter might eventually turn on him as well. It's unclear, but Dexter will need to be careful when dealing with someone as conniving and powerful as Leon Prater. Prater never inducts anyone without watching them work first. He designs situations that reveal true character and alignment, putting potential assets through carefully calibrated tests. There are moral tests. Will someone follow their own principles if doing so conflicts with Prater's interests? Then there are the operational tests. Can they improvise under pressure, bring more trophies, all while preserving the sanctity of the group? Loyalty tests. When forced to choose between external relationships and Prater's inner circle, who will they protect? Dexter's surgical efficiency passes the operational tests with unsettling ease, which probably enthralls and alarms Prater at the same time. The more capable an asset becomes, the more dangerous they are as a variable. As Dexter proves himself increasingly capable, Prater manipulates him further, simultaneously tightening the surveillance and their social binding. He went to Red's house and tried to offer him a ride to the helicopter, but was this altruism or just a clever ruse to watch him more closely and pick his brain? Knowing Prater, it was probably the latter, disguised to look like the former. He lost so many assets lately, he would be remiss not to vet the new guy more closely. The Gemini killer situation becomes a pivotal moment. Gemini was a wild card who had been lying to Prater anyway, though he wasn't aware of that fact. But Gareth's ego alone made him a problem that Prater would have had to handle sooner or later. Dexter's efficient resolution of this problem elevates him from an intriguing guest to a potentially essential instrument. Little does he know that Dexter cannot and will not be controlled by anything beyond his dark passenger. That paradox could create yet another unseen problem for Prater. His indispensable tools become the ones he will eventually have to fear. From this point forward, his behavior toward Dexter will have to shift from seduction and feigned respect to strict management. More access paired with more containment, all for Prater's benefit and protection. Dexter better make sure he doesn't become too distracted, because Prater will not hesitate to capitalize on any weakness he finds in anyone around him. The relationship between Prater and Dexter is built on a fundamental misunderstanding that becomes increasingly problematic. Prater admires killers indiscriminately, celebrating style, flourish, and audacity, regardless of whether targets deserve their fate. Dexter's code rejects that kind of indiscriminate reverence. Prater may try to translate Dexter's code into just another aesthetic to be used for his own ends, something to be quoted, reinterpreted, and adapted to serve the club's needs. He completely misunderstands that Dexter's code isn't ornamental decoration, it's a moral detonator that Dexter uses to determine who lives and dies around him. This would cause escalating tension as Prater frames tasks as ethical tune-ups to a broken world, subtly trying to bend Dexter's code into house doctrine. Meanwhile, Dexter increasingly sees Prater's aesthetic as a mask covering a supply chain for predation, and that isn't something Dexter would ever willingly be a party to. Just ask Biney. The philosophical rift would only widen as Prater's warmth morphs into managerial calculation. His compliments become calibration attempts. He gives Dexter fewer abstractions and more constructed dilemmas, hoping to train out the parts of the code that don't serve his purposes. But again, he wouldn't see how futile such an attempt would be. It's bound to become a battle of wills and ability in no time if Prater doesn't come to understand that Dexter isn't like the other killers he's collected over the years. Episode 7 marks a crucial turning point in Prater's story when everything starts spiraling beyond his carefully maintained control. At his retreat, Dexter kills Gareth's twin brother in broad daylight, the moment where Dexter goes fully unhinged, according to the show's own description. This represents a massive problem for Prater's system. The killing happens at his estate during his event in a way that's impossible to contain or reframe. For someone whose entire operation depends on maintaining plausible deniability, having the Bay Harbor Butcher commit murder murder on his property creates an existential threat. With Lowell, Mia, and both of the Gemini killers now eliminated, Prater's collection has been significantly reduced. Each death makes the remaining killers more valuable, but also more suspicious. The dynamic that Leon spent so much time perfecting is collapsing before his very eyes as one key player after another disappears. The episode also features the most direct confrontation yet between Dexter and Angel Batista, where Dexter essentially confesses by saying, "If I really am who you think I am, this can't possibly end well for you."
If I really am who you think I am, this can't possibly end well for you.
This creates additional pressure on Prater's operation as external law enforcement closes in on one of the killers he has around him, especially with Batista tracking Dexter's car. What happens when he sees that Dexter is at Leon's house? Unless Dexter finds the tracker in time, Leon is incredibly exposed at this point. While it remains unconfirmed speculation, episode 7 provided additional circumstantial evidence for the theory that Prater himself is the New York Ripper. The positioning of weapons in his collection and details about his physical stature have fueled fan speculation, though this currently remains theoretical rather than confirmed plot. The evidence is largely circumstantial. His obsession with the case, his intimate knowledge of unsolved murders, and his ability to obtain artifacts that should be in police custody. But the show has been careful to present this as mystery rather than revelation. Still, it could be Leon. It's far from improbable. If this theory proves correct, it would recontextualize everything about Prater's relationship with his collection. Instead of being a patron of killers, he would be one of the most prolific serial killers in the show's history, hiding behind philanthropy while building a museum to his own crimes. Most importantly, it would mean that there is nothing stopping Dexter from targeting Prater directly, assuming he wasn't already planning on eliminating him. Just like everyone else around Dexter, Leon's life is getting more and more complicated, and it may be over sooner than anyone anticipated. Angel Batista's investigation represents everything Prater's system was designed to prevent: external scrutiny backed by legitimate authority and personal motivation. By planting a tracker on Dexter's vehicle, Batista converts Dexter's movements into a breadcrumb trail that could lead directly to his estate. This creates 3 explosive possibilities that threaten to destroy everything Prater has built. First, law enforcement could arrive to find a critical mass of predators and paraphernalia, shredding his deniability and collapsing the ecosystem he spent years curating. Second, to protect the larger operation, Prater might engineer a selective sacrifice, allowing parts of his network to burn in order to spare the core structure. This would be perfectly aligned with his hands-off philosophy: let others take the fall while he remains untouchable. Third, and most dangerously, if Batista's investigation intersects with one of Prater's ritualized gatherings, Dexter becomes the fulcrum on which secrecy, morality, and survival all swing. Prater might try to weaponize Dexter's code against Batista's incursion, or Batista might force Dexter to choose between protecting Prater's operation and maintaining his own cover. The tracker transforms Prater's greatest strength, his control over information and timing, into his greatest vulnerability by imposing an externally driven timetable he can't manipulate. As episode 7 ends, several dangerous elements are converging that threaten to destroy Prater's carefully constructed world. Dexter remains unaware of the tracker, setting up a potential collision between Batista's investigation and Prater's network in the final episodes. Prater sits atop an ever-shrinking cone of deniability. He's still technically a collector rather than a killer, but he's now within reach of outside scrutiny that could reveal everything to the world. The estate would have to operate in a strict lockdown mode, with enhanced security protocols and more invasive surveillance as he tries to maintain control while preparing to combat the potential exposure. Dexter occupies this impossible position where he's both prized and surveilled, granted unprecedented access that doubles as an increasingly sophisticated cage. The house runs containment patterns, preparing for intense damage control if the outside world finally breaches Leon's perimeter. If Batista does show up, Leon will almost certainly discover that Dexter is the one that brought the police to his door. The relationship between Prater and Dexter will then inevitably evolve from a sickly mutual fascination to a deadly game of chess where both players understand that only one can survive with their secrets intact. Dexter has his skills, Leon has his his power and resources, but which will be most effective in their final match. Leon Prater represents an evolution in predatory behavior that makes him uniquely threatening in the Dexter universe. Previous villains tried to break Dexter through direct confrontation, emotional manipulation, or superior killing techniques. Prater is systematically dismantling him with all of these, as well as environmental control and psychological warfare. Remember, Leon has created a sustainable model for harvesting all the satisfaction of murder while maintaining complete insulation from risk. The psychological rewards might actually be greater than traditional killing because he gets to play God with multiple murderers while never facing consequences. He isn't going to let all that go without a fight. Most terrifyingly, he seems to be beginning to understand Dexter better than Dexter understands himself. While others have tried to corrupt or control him, Prater celebrates him, which makes his manipulations far more subtle and potentially effective. What he doesn't know is that Dexter has a son that he would do anything for. That makes him more dangerous than Al, Lowell, or any of those guys. Since showing up in Iron Lake, Harrison guides almost every decision Dexter makes. Leon would be nothing more than a blip on his radar if Harrison's safety was on the line. Whether Prater is himself the New York Ripper, just a master manipulator who kills by proxy, or something entirely unexpected, he's already proven he can make the Bay Harbor Butcher dance to his tune, and that's without even knowing his true identity. The question isn't whether he's dangerous, it's whether Dexter can recognize the trap before it's too late to escape. Leon Prater's story is ultimately about what happens when wealth, intelligence, and psychopathy combine to create a predator who never has to hunt or even lift a finger. He's built a network where the prey comes to him, performs for his entertainment, and eliminates his problems while he remains completely untouched. That is what makes Prater potentially the most sophisticated and dangerous villain in the entire Dexter franchise. Not because of what he does directly, but because of what he's able to make others do while maintaining the perfect illusion of civilized respectability. Dexter needs to watch his back closely if he wants to come out ahead on this one. If you enjoyed this video and want to see the biggest plot holes that could ruin Dexter Resurrection, click the video on the screen.